much, when you buy a vacation rental property, or really any real estate investment property in general, your operating expenses aren't gonna be just your mortgage. There are many other expenses that you need to take into account, especially for short-term rentals. Hello and welcome to the Wanderlust host channel. My name is Olivia Tati and I am a short-term rental specialist and world traveler on a mission to inspire you to invest in real estate and travel the world. My goal is to build a community of like-minded millennials who have spent years stifling their creativity, break free, and take control over their lives. Short-term rentals usually have way more operating expenses than long-term rentals do. With long-term rentals, you can usually put a lot of expenses like utilities, snow removal on the actual tenant, whereas with short-term rentals, that's just not a thing. Usually with short-term rentals, people are staying for anywhere from 1 to 30 days. It wouldn't make sense to break out like a 20th of your water bill to one of your guests. Don't get me wrong, short-term rentals are great, especially if you love the travel and hospitality industry. But it is also way more of a job than it is having midterm or long-term rentals. That's why it also has way more expenses than a long-term or midterm rental does. But it also makes a lot more money usually. A lot of people burn out of short-term rentals and they really just don't want to deal with the hassle. I'm actually making a video that talks about the tough parts about being a short-term rental host and why you shouldn't invest in short-term rentals. So make sure to go and watch that whenever it comes out. You know, I'm just trying to give you guys the real here. Personally, I love short-term rentals, but I also know it's not for everyone. So I am here to help you and tell you 10 of the most common expenses that you need to take into account when you're analyzing your short-term rental property. So the first thing that you have to take into account is obviously going to be your mortgage. When I say mortgage, I'm talking about the whole thing. So your PITI, P-I-T-I, that's going to be your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your insurance. Although note that if you do buy a house in cash, you're not going to have principal and interest to pay. You're just going to have your taxes and insurance. However, since this video is for beginners, usually beginners aren't going out and buying a property in cash. So you're most likely going to have a mortgage payment. The second expense is PMI, private mortgage insurance. If you watched my video about how I bought my first investment property with $0 out of my own pocket, if you haven't, I'll make sure to tag that in the show captions so that way you can go back and watch it. You'll note that I put as low as 3.5% down on my first investment property. Whenever you put less than 20% down, you're usually going to have to pay what they call PMI, private mortgage insurance. It's basically just an additional insurance that's added to your monthly payment or your monthly note. And then with some loans, when you reach 20% equity, that PMI actually can fall off. So after you get to 20% equity in the property, you don't have to keep paying that private mortgage insurance. But for other loans, that PMI might be on there for the life of the loan. Make sure to reach out to your lender and ask if you are going to be paying PMI or not, and if it's possible later down the line to get that PMI removed and how. The third expense that you're gonna have is any additional insurance outside of home insurance and outside of PMI, private mortgage insurance. So for example, I own a property in New Orleans, and if you know anything about New Orleans, there are lots of hurricanes and flooding is pretty common. So in New Orleans, I actually have flood insurance on top of my home short-term rental insurance and on top of my PMI as well. You also want to make sure that whatever insurance you're getting for your home covers short-term rentals. That's going to be usually more than a regular home insurance is going to be. So make sure when you're talking to your insurance agent, be clear to them that it is going to be a short-term rental, just because it comes with extra liabilities that you need to be covered. The fourth expense you're gonna need to take into account are your utilities. So we're talking Wi-Fi, water, electricity, trash, sewer, maintenance, etc. Remember, short-term rentals are very different from long-term rentals. A lot of those costs in long-term rentals you can actually put on your tenant. But for short-term rentals, you really can't put those on your guest. It's your responsibility as a host to provide those services for your guests. So make sure you take those into account when running your numbers. And don't forget, if you're finding this information to be useful, I'd really appreciate if you hit that like and subscribe button and the bell notification button. It really helps to grow my channel, and the more support I can get, the more this video can get sent out to other folks to help them analyze their properties as well. Okay, so the fifth expense that I want you to make sure that you're taking into account is recurring monthly maintenance. So this is usually outdoor activities like yard work, snow removal, pest control, hot tub maintenance. The list can go on, depending on what market you're in and what different amenities you have. There just are a few things that need to be taken care of monthly, and depending on the season, for example, you probably won't need snow removal in the summer, but you may need extra lawn care in the summer. Or with hot tub maintenance, for example, you're gonna need someone to buy chemicals, balance out the chemicals, refresh the water in your hot tub, all that jazz. And a lot of these costs can really add up, especially just depending on what market you're in and what's required. So make sure to add those in your numbers. Trust me, if you put it in at the beginning, you're not gonna be hit by surprises when you've already bought this property and it's up and running. Okay, the sixth expense is a yearly deep clean. You're gonna have so many people coming into this property. A yearly deep clean is really recommended just because over time, your property is probably just gonna kind of get gross. And when cleaners are cleaning in between stays, usually they only have about 4 to 5 hours max to get it properly cleaned and turned over for the next guest. Usually they're in and depending on the size of the property, they're in and done in an hour and a half or 2 hours. So they're probably not doing that deep cleaning that's needed to be done to make sure that the property maintains its pristine level that you bought it at. The seventh expense that you need to make sure that you're taking into account is replacement and repairs. Small things will break, I'm sorry, but they just will. Guests will break stuff all the time. Sometimes it's a wine glass, sometimes it's a garbage disposal. Don't put a garbage disposal in a rental. Learn from my mistakes, please. I literally had a curtain rod fall down the other day. Things break. People are using this house. It is inevitable. One key thing, don't put anything in the house that you are sentimentally attached to that you don't want other people to use. Just assume anything in that house is breakable. And so you need to make sure that you are separating out money monthly. Usually I like to budget about 2 to 5% of the monthly income that I have coming in towards just random things breaking and needing to get either repaired or replaced. Your eighth expense is going to be your major reserves. So when you buy real estate, you're owning a house. And with that comes the responsibility of some really big ticket items. I'm talking about your roof, your AC and heating, your plumbing system, your hot water heater. Those major items can be really costly to replace. And unfortunately, they don't last a lifetime. They usually have an expiration date. So whenever you are going through your initial due diligence period with your home, going through your inspection properties, make sure to note down how old a lot of these items are and factor those into your costs, because you're going to need to replace them at a certain point in time. I always like to make sure I have 3 to 6 months worth of reserves for each of my properties. That way, if anything happens in my properties, I have money already ready to go to help fix whatever needs to be fixed. I also make sure that any additional profit goes straight into the reserves account to build that fund before taking any profit myself. The ninth expense you need to make sure to cover is replenishing any amenities. So if you're like me, I choose to provide soap, shampoo, conditioner, coffee, tea, spices, everything that can make a home or a short-term rental extremely comfortable and livable, and just, you know, those extra little touches during a stay that makes it better than the rest. Since people are actually using them, you need to make sure that you factored it into your numbers that you will be replacing these frequently. What I really like to do is, ideally for things like shampoo or conditioner, I'll put them on some sort of subscription model. You can do this through Amazon. A lot of companies are now actually starting to do this. That way it automatically gets sent and I don't have to think about going in and ordering it anytime it's low. And the 10th and final, and one of the most important expenses that you need to make sure that you have factored into your analysis before buying the property, is any permitting and legal requirements. So different places are gonna have different permitting requirements. And with that may come a fee. For some, there may be no fee at all. You don't have to pay anything. You can just start short-term renting out, no problem. For others, there may be just a startup fee, like a $200 permit fee or a $500 permit fee. For others, you might have a recurring fee that you have to pay, or recurring additional taxes for it being a short-term rental that you need to pay. So make sure to call the zoning office, look into the permits and regulations, and double check to see what those are so you can factor those into your numbers. Another thing is, if you are putting your property, for example, into an LLC, make sure you take the additional costs it requires to get that LLC started up and maintained into your numbers as well. And that's it. Those are the 10 things. I really hope that this was helpful. I really wish that I had a video like this when I was first starting out, because that would have helped me plan out my numbers a little better. So I want to help you. I want to make sure that you've got as much covered before you make that first purchase and can make the best decision you possibly can. Once again, if you did like this video, found it to be informational, make sure to like and subscribe, share this with any friends or family if you think that this may be useful for them, especially if they're trying to get into the short-term rental industry. Thanks for watching.